The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. The man starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Michael, we have Senator Sheldon Whitehouse going to be our leadoff guest tonight. He was expecting to have a vote that he would be voting on in the Senate Judiciary Committee on an Attorney General confirmation, but something happened to it. So he's going to explain to us what happened to that vote and when we might have that vote.
And that vote is sitting in at least two pair of pants that we know of in the Senate, one named Tillerson, the other named Cornyn.
Right, exactly. We'll see how it plays out. Thanks,
right,
Michael.
My friend. Have a good one.
Thank you. The history of lying in Senate confirmation hearings for Attorney General nominees is a short one. It does not even include the two criminal attorneys general who Richard Nixon appointed. They lied and committed crimes after becoming Attorney General, not during their confirmation hearings. But the history of lying in Senate confirmation hearings for Attorney General does include only Trump nominees. Todd Blanche had one of his lies skillfully exposed by a senator's questions. Todd Blanche, under oath, told the Senate Judiciary Committee, quote, "The weaponization fund is dead." That's the word he used. Dead. Turns out it's alive. And Senator John Cornyn proved that seconds after Todd Blanche said that it was dead. Senator Cornyn proved that was a lie.
Is the settlement agreement enforceable as a contract by the parties?
Well, yes, it's an enforceable document. So I suppose if President Trump's counsel sought to enforce it, they potentially could.
Including
up to that point, right there, Todd Blanche planned to get through his confirmation hearing on the lie that a document that he wrote and signed was dead. But then Senator John Cornyn showed just how alive it is, and now Senator Cornyn is refusing to vote for Todd Blanche's confirmation because Todd Blanche is refusing to put in writing a new document that negates the one-page document in which Todd Blanche, all by himself, with only his signature, created a $1.776 billion fund of American taxpayer money to pay criminals who attacked the Capitol for Donald Trump and tried to kill the vice president for Donald Trump. But the longest portion, actually, if you leave that document up on the screen, you will see that the longest portion of this document is the part that forever protects Donald Trump from any prosecution for any tax crimes that he may have already committed. And it seemed very clear tonight that that is now and always has been the most important part of that document for Donald Trump, the longest part, the part that protects him from criminal tax prosecutions. Todd Blanche put in writing, quote, "The United States releases, waives, acquits, and forever discharges each of the plaintiffs from, and is hereby forever barred and precluded from prosecuting or pursuing any matters currently pending or that could be pending, including tax returns filed before the effective date." This massive amnesty for tax crimes was written to apply to Donald Trump and every member of Donald Trump's family, meaning his children and their wives and ex-wives and his grandchildren and his nieces and nephews and anyone in business with Donald Trump, including, quote, "related companies, affiliates, and subsidiaries." This could be hundreds, if not thousands of people. If Todd Blanche could simply prove to the Senate in writing that the document is now legally void and has no meaning, he could win confirmation in the Senate Judiciary Committee and then probably win the Senate confirmation on the Senate floor when the full Senate votes. That's all it takes. Just make that piece of paper go away and Todd Blanche could be confirmed, and Donald Trump simply won't do it. Here is how Senator Cornyn doesn't care about, what has to be remembered is Senator Cornyn doesn't care about all of the rest of Todd Blanche's transgressions as Attorney General. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care about Todd Blanche trying to prosecute James Comey for posting a photograph of seashells. He doesn't care about Todd Blanche trying to prosecute a United States senator for simply saying what the military code of justice is, saying that publicly. John Cornyn is not taking some strong principled stand on the high ethical standards and legal standards he requires to vote to confirm an attorney general. He is setting an unbelievably low bar. John Cornyn is just taking a stand against that one piece of paper. And here's how Senator Cornyn's day began at 9:06 a.m. today.
What we're trying to do is get Mr. Blanche to conform the settlement documents in the tax lawsuit to what his sworn testimony was in the hearing. And I'd be satisfied with that. But I don't know, somebody somewhere, I don't know whether it's the White House or somebody works there or somebody works for the president, is basically telling him don't agree to those terms. And so we're kind of back to square one.
Somebody who works for the president? Who could that be? So let me get this straight. Senator Cornyn, you're actually trying to publicly pretend someone who works for the president is insisting on the tax amnesty for Donald Trump and everyone around him. It could not be more obvious that the person who is refusing to kill this document is the beneficiary of this document, Donald Trump.
I am prepared to vote no, but I do think I owe it to my constituents and to Mr. Blanche to try to negotiate in good faith, and that's what we've been doing. And so we'll see where things are this morning and see where we go from here.
And where did we go from here? Well, at 10:22 a.m., Republican Senator Thom Tillis, who is also refusing to vote for Todd Blanche unless the Trump slush fund and tax amnesty is eliminated, said this.
Todd Blanche is negotiating in good faith, but it's clear that the approval to get this done is above his pay grade, and we just need to get to that pay grade. I don't believe it's the president.
Oh, well, wow. What pay grade could it possibly be? That is the typically timid nonsense that you get from Thom Tillis when he is doing his version, his tiny, weak version of standing up to Donald Trump, if you can call it that. Quote, I don't believe it's the president. There is no conceivable reason not to believe it is the president. But Thom Tillis is still afraid of saying that. John Cornyn and Thom Tillis got their answer from Donald Trump on social media at 11:15 a.m. when Donald Trump revealed he is not willing to change a single word in this document, especially the longest part of it, granting him and his family full and complete amnesty, basically criminal pardons for any tax crimes that they may have already committed. Donald Trump posted on social media the lie that Todd Blanche is a star. That's how he began it. Todd Blanche is a star. It was one of those demented Trump social media posts filled with strange capitalizations of random words and random letters, attacking Senator Cornyn, Senator Tillis, who is also, and because they're both refusing to vote for Todd Blanche until Donald Trump's slush fund and tax amnesty deal is dead. And in that social media post, Donald Trump did what a president who's actually really fighting for a troubled nominee absolutely never does. Donald Trump said, I have no objection to temporarily withdrawing Todd's name if they do not do the right thing. Once a president openly discusses even the possibility of withdrawing a nominee, it becomes virtually impossible to build support for that nominee. Senator Cornyn revealed what might be the most important part of the dynamic of Republican Senate resistance to Donald Trump on Todd Blanche's nomination when he replied to Donald Trump's social media post at 11:32 a.m. saying, quote, "POTUS is mistaken if he believes concerns about the provisions in his tax lawsuit settlement are limited to me and Senator Tillis." So imagine if you are Susan Collins and you are running for re-election in Maine, and the new Senate nominee, Democratic nominee in Maine, Troy Jackson, is running ahead of you, Susan Collins, in the polls. How eager are you, Susan Collins, to vote for Todd Blanche for Attorney General? How glad are you, Susan Collins, to have Senator Cornyn protecting you from having to cast that vote for or against Todd Blanche? How many other Republican senators running for re-election are eager to vote for Todd Blanche? How many of them desperately need the protection they are getting right now from Senator Cornyn and Senator Tillis? Senator Chris Coons, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said this.
I don't think Todd Blanche has a chance of getting through our committee, and this reveals how deep the corruption is around this weaponization fund, that Trump absolutely refuses to let Blanche sign the document that would actually kill it. I think there are other Republicans weighing in with the White House saying, you've got to kill this weaponization fund.
And so tonight, we know that Donald Trump's self-pardon for possible tax crimes and his pardon for every single member of his family and extended family for tax crimes and all of his business associates is more important to him, much, much, much more important to him than having a Senate-confirmed Attorney General of the United States. And Donald Trump has now made Todd Blanche a Senate campaign issue in Maine, in North Carolina, where the Democratic nominee for Senate is polling ahead of the Republican nominee, and in Texas, where the Democratic nominee is polling ahead of the Republican nominee. Donald Trump is counting, according to his social media post, of getting 2 new Republican senators in North Carolina and Texas to vote for Todd Blanche next year if they're elected to the United States Senate. Donald Trump knows tonight that there is a very strong chance that both Thom Tillis and John Cornyn will be replaced in the United States Senate by Democrats who will not vote for Todd Blanche. Donald Trump knows tonight that there is a very strong chance that the Democrats will win control of the United States Senate, and that will make Todd Blanche's confirmation impossible. And that's okay with Donald Trump. He's happy to take that bet. That is a very small price for Donald Trump to pay to preserve his self-pardon for any tax crimes he may have already committed. Leading off our coverage tonight is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. How long can Todd Blanche serve as acting Attorney General for Donald Trump without being confirmed?
Pretty much indefinitely under the statute under which he was appointed, which means that Trump is putting Republican senators through this exercise for not a lot of practical gain. And now he's put them really between a rock and a hard place. The rock is, do you vote for this guy because you're frightened of Trump and obsequious to Trump and have to own all the nonsense that he has pulled, including the slush fund and the tax amnesty scam? Or do you follow what Trump has done and said, well, we'll do this after the election once Cornyn and Tillis are gone, which now makes this a live election issue where the outcome of Senate control disposes of this. And now all of the candidates are back in the soup again, having to try to defend why this miscreant should be Attorney General of the United States. So it's a terrible position for Republican senators to be in. And I could not be less sympathetic because they brought it on themselves with years and years of sycophancy and sucking up and spinelessness, so that they're not in a position to head him off when he tries to do these crazy things.
And now we really could not ask for more clarity about exactly what the status of this deal is. It is obviously very much alive, and Donald Trump is refusing to change a single word of it. He's refusing to reduce the tax pardon in any way. He's refusing to reduce the number of people it applies to. It could apply to hundreds of people beyond just people named Trump. And that Donald Trump is now proving is not just alive, it is hugely important to him to preserve.
Yeah, both deals he wants still to be on. He wants the slush fund to pay off his January 6 cop beaters and to be basically a revenue account for his gang that's going to attack the election in November. And he wants his Trump family tax fraud amnesty scam. And in order to do that, he's outed the lie that Blanche has been telling, that this whole thing is dead. Clearly, it's not dead. Clearly, it's a very living zombie still stomping around, because he won't actually kill it. He won't put the wooden stake through its heart. So he's forced him into that lie. And of course, that just cascades into all the other lies. In the clip that you played, what I particularly loved was Blanche pretending that he did not know what Donald Trump's lawyers were going to do in the case if they would move to enforce the account. Well, of course, he was President Trump's lawyer. He still acts as President Trump's lawyer, and he colluded with President Trump's lawyers to set up this scheme. And it's a deal, so two parties. So he obviously has been in touch with President Trump's lawyers, but he denied that in his hearing as well. So he's neck deep in swirling lies, and it's only Republican spinelessness that they won't force answers out of him that has not just turned this all into a complete mess for both Blanche and the president.
Speaking of Republican spinelessness, how many Republican senators running for re-election and other Republican senators are now hiding behind John Cornyn on this?
Oh, I think I think Cornyn and Tillis can go into the caucus lunch, and there are a lot of people patting them on the back and patting them on the arm and saying, yeah, thanks, buddy. You're saving me a world of hurt here. You know, this is a guy, remember, in the slush fund and tax amnesty case, there's a judicial inquiry going on into whether they committed fraud on the court, which is the worst thing that a lawyer can do. It means that an officer of the court has deliberately done something dishonest in order to create an injustice using the court system. It's actually worse than contempt of court. It's so bad that the accusation has never even been made about any senior Department of Justice official in the history of the United States. And here's a guy who is under inquiry for that very thing. The judge preserved that question because she was not satisfied. So they're willing to vote for a guy who is under present inquiry for committing fraud on the court. It just shows, you know, to get out of this, I think they'd be very, very happy.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Thank you.
Coming up, survivors of convicted child rapist and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein are using the delayed vote on Todd Blanche to urge Republican senators to vote against him in his Attorney General confirmation process. Congressman Ro Khanna joins us next. With Todd Blanche's Attorney General confirmation vote now on hold, survivors of convicted child sex trafficker and rapist Jeffrey Epstein's abuse are using this additional time to urge Republicans to reject Donald Trump's nominee. Yesterday, a group of these survivors was on Capitol Hill to voice their opposition to Todd Blanche to Senate Judiciary Committee staff members. Here is what Epstein survivor Danielle Bensky said about Todd Blanche.
Blanche had lied under oath when he gave testimony because he had said that all of the things that needed to, or that were misredacted, needed to be taken down and that they were put back up within 24 hours, which we know is wholeheartedly untrue. My personal information was out there 3 times, 3 batches, right? And this is out there. We've talked about all of these things a lot, but there are many lies that you can catch him in. And so I just think we all think that, you know, he can't be Attorney General. I think it's a massive chilling effect to all survivors across the U.S. I think it is absolutely a vote against survivors in this country, not just Epstein and Maxwell, but I think it sends a huge message to who you can trust in this country.
And here's what Danielle Bensky told Alicia Menendez today.
I think there's hope with Tillis and Cornyn. You know, we really do want to have meetings with them. We really hope that they will take our meetings. It was such a serendipitous moment. I was walking into the elevator and Tillis was walking off of the elevator. It was like, oh, you're in front of me right now. I have a book for you, you know. And we had, you know, survivors who came in early to Washington, D.C., had flagged all sorts of investigative leads because, you know, these are facts. Like, you look at these books and they contain so many investigative leads. And Todd Blanche has said so many times that there's nothing to investigate. So we really wanted to show that, no, this is fact. It's not any sort of political affiliation. But if you look in these books, you'll find something that that should be investigated. So I'll just say that I was standing there with a book that was flagged with all these different, you know, to your point, colors and labels. And Tillis walks up the elevator. And I was like, okay, yes, can we have a meeting with you, right? That's all we've been asking for from the beginning. We're so grateful that you did, you know, kind of throw down the gauntlet with Todd Blanche and say you have to meet with survivors. But we really need to talk to him about what that meeting consisted of, because it wasn't the meeting that I think he had hoped for. It certainly wasn't the meeting that we hoped for.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California, whose successful legislation forced the release of the Epstein files. Congressman Khanna, we are hearing today from Senator Cornyn and Senator Tillis nothing about the Epstein files, nothing about the Epstein survivors, only about one piece of paper. The blanket tax amnesty for Donald Trump, his family and friends, and the slush fund that Donald Trump was creating. They only appear to care about that one piece of paper. And it seems that nothing that any of the Epstein survivors have said is affecting their vote in any way.
Well, they should care about the Epstein survivors. Danny Bensky is an American hero. I met her because of Bradley Edwards, who you introduced on your show. She stood out there twice in front of the Capitol to tell her story. That's the only reason Thomas Massie and I were able to pass the Epstein Transparency Act. And what Danny is saying is that survivors like her are appalled that these Epstein files have the names of people who allegedly raped them, abused them. I mean, these survivors text me and Thomas all the time, what's happening? And there hasn't been a single investigation, Lawrence, in this country. And that's because of Todd Blanche. There is no reason he should be on the court.
So as this thing goes on hold, as you know, this is now an indefinite hold. There's nothing happening that indicates that next week Donald Trump is suddenly going to give up on his tax amnesty and his slush fund. And as that time expands, the opportunity to expand the reasons to vote against a nominee also exists. And so what is true historically in situations like this is for people who are not really the reason why the nomination has slowed down, they can now make their case and be joined to the reason why it is being slowed down or stopped.
You're absolutely right, Lawrence, and you're an astute observer of the Senate. And the reason that Cornyn may be holding it up is he doesn't want a blanket immunity for Trump's family, but it gives the survivors the opportunity to go to the American public and say, how dare the Senate confirm Todd Blanche? When you have had prime ministers, former ambassadors, former princes prosecuted around the world, how is it possible that Todd Blanche hasn't launched a single investigation in this country, even when you have such serious allegations against people like Les Wexner and Leon Black? And how is it possible that he has not released the other files? And then he's insulting these survivors. I mean, if you hear Danny Bensky and you hear some of the survivors, what they texted me, he was curt. He basically said, well, why are you wasting my time? What more do you have? That person should never be the Attorney General of the United States.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you very much for joining our coverage tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
And coming up, 72% of American voters disapprove of Donald Trump's war in Iran. And today, Republican senators cast their 12th vote in support of Donald Trump's war that 72% of the country is against. That's next. Chuck Schumer forced another vote in the Senate today on Donald Trump's war in Iran, and Republicans voted once again to keep Donald Trump's war going indefinitely. That is the 12th time Senate Republicans have voted in support of Donald Trump's war. Politico reports just 3 Republicans defied the president and joined with Democrats to halt the war, barring congressional authorization, mirroring numerous past votes, but Democrats are betting they'll see a change in Republican attitudes if lawmakers return from their summer break to a continued conflict. It has become very clear there is no end. There is no agreement. It is only escalating, said Senator Patty Murray, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee. She contends Republicans are absolutely feeling pressure to begin siding with Democrats on war powers votes. Today's Senate vote comes as Americans' view of Donald Trump's war continues to be negative, and as tensions with Iran continue to escalate. CNBC reports Iran's Revolutionary Guard threatened further escalation on Thursday after a wave of retaliatory U.S. strikes on the country overnight. The Guard said on Thursday that it will punish the aggressor today, adding that countries aiding the U.S. in the conflict would also receive a harsh response, according to Iranian state media. It comes after U.S. forces completed a heavy wave of strikes against Iran on Wednesday in retaliation against its missile attacks on American forces in the region. New polling shows 72% disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of his war, and 67% believe that Donald Trump's war in Iran has hurt the United States, and 60% believe Donald Trump makes things sound better than they are in his war. Donald Trump has come up with a new idea for his war in Iran, and it's the same idea that he wants to apply to every other country in the world: tariffs.
So I'd like them to add Iran as tariffs, not just as sanctions. I think it's important. That's what Lindsey wanted, because I heard that they have tariffs on Russia, but not on those 5 countries with having to do with Iran. I'd like to see tariffs on Iran.
Joining us now is Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, retired commander of the U.S. Army in Europe. He is an MS Now military analyst. General, I don't even know how to form a question about a president saying we should put tariffs on a country that we are at war with. Iran does not export anything to the United States. There is nothing to tariff there. But what's your response to that, where that's what the commander-in-chief had to say today about his war?
Well, Lawrence, it is hard to describe my thoughts on this, because I think, I'm not an expert in this realm, but I think sanctions are the equivalent to tariffs. In fact, sometimes actually even harsher. So putting a tariffs on a country you're at war with just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. As you were making the introduction and talking about the number of our fellow citizens who are opposed to this war, it brought to mind something. I hate to get geeky on you here, but it brought to mind something that Clausewitz once talked about called the Remarkable Trinity. And when he discussed that Remarkable Trinity, he said there were 3 main elements that would cause you to go to war. Number one, The military is in the realm of chance and probability. They are the ones that fight the war, and their ability to conquer the enemy is critically important. The second one is the government, the head of the government that provides reasons for the war. They represent rational policy and political purpose. And then the third piece is the people. They provide the passion for going to war, and they represent emotion or hatred to the enemy. And those people are represented by the Congress of the United States and the Senate of the United States. And when you have such a disconnect between what the people want and what the government is voting for, when you have such a disconnect between the president giving rational policy and political purposes and stating things like he's going to put tariffs on a country, that only leaves one element of that Clausewitzian trilogy, and that's the military. And they seem to be bearing quite a bit of the brunt of this conflict.
What is your assessment of the state of this war as of tonight?
Yeah, I'm very concerned because we've seen over the last couple of days, since the president said in the Oval Office that I think the quote was something along the lines of, they've hit us again, so we're going to hit them. It's become a tit for tat with military forces. And so far, that has not been successful in terms of reaching a strategic end state, which hasn't been identified. But not only that, we see Iran actually going after other countries now and expanding this war. And the United States is taking the blame for that from other countries, from Jordan. Jordan is concerned about our alliance. From Egypt, where ships have been struck. From Iraq, where both Saudi Arabia and the U.S. struck proxy forces, the Popular Mobilization Front, which is causing a lot of turmoil inside of Iraq itself. In Egypt, just go down the list of Middle Eastern countries that have all been affected and that continue to be affected, and it's expanding the war. And I'm very concerned, having studied warfare and national security, these are the kind of things that cause conflict to spin out of proportion and spin into a very dangerous way. As the president, I think, has learned, it's very easy to start a war. It's extremely difficult to end one.
General Mark Hertling, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence.
And coming up, MS Now's Ken Dilanian has new reporting about 2 pardons given by Donald Trump in which he publicly got the facts of the case completely wrong. That's next. MS Now Justice correspondent Ken Dilanian has been studying some of the most outrageous pardons Donald Trump has granted in his second term in MS Now's series Justice Interrupted. Ken's latest report focuses on Trump pardons of 2 police officers who were convicted in a second-degree murder case for the killing of 20-year-old Karon Hilton Brown and its subsequent cover-up. Issuing pardons for the 2 officers was among Donald Trump's first actions when he returned to office. And of course, Donald Trump got basic facts of the case completely wrong.
What the
It was a police chase that ended in a death.
Are you good? No, he bleeding heavy.
On an October night in 2020, Karon Hilton was on a moped, pursued by officers in Washington, D.C., who say they suspected him of a crime. The lengthy chase through residential streets ended when Karon drove into the path of an oncoming minivan. He died hours later. Body-worn cameras show what happened next.
He's bleeding too much. While my baby was laying on the ground, blood is gushing out of his head. They're checking his pockets. You understand that? No one is attending to my child.
After the incident, the officers denied that a chase had occurred and attempted to hide details of what happened, at one point even turning off their body-worn cameras.
This was a murder and a cover-up.
Ahmed Bassett prosecuted the 2 officers, Terrence Sutton and Andrew Zabowski. After Bassett began investigating, a different story emerged.
This was treated as an ordinary traffic fender-bender accident by Sutton and Zabowski, who took control of the scene. Basically, they told the car that hit Mr. Brown to leave within 20 minutes, and so that was a piece of evidence that drove away.
You guys good?
Witnesses who were trying to provide information about what they saw and heard were told to shoot, and no witness statements were taken.
Everything I'm speaking is straight facts.
Prosecutors concluded the officers had no legal reason to pursue Hilton and therefore helped cause his death. In 2022, a federal jury convicted Sutton of second-degree murder and both officers of obstruction of justice. And in 2024, a judge sentenced them to 5 and 4 years in prison, respectively.
I was happy for Mr. Hilton's 6-month-old. To grow up without him was a travesty, and so to be able to give them some modicum of justice, to give the community some modicum of justice, was a relief.
The relief was short-lived. One day after he freed January 6 defendants who assaulted police officers, President Trump granted Sutton and Zabavsky full pardons, casting aside the findings of a jury. Neither officer had spent a day in prison. And when Trump was asked about why he did it, he didn't appear to understand the case.
They were arrested, put in jail for 5 years because they went after an illegal, and I guess something happened where something went wrong. And they arrested the 2 officers and put them in jail for going after a criminal.
But Karan Hilton was a U.S. citizen. The pardons outraged the community, resulting in protests. In Northwest D.C., Karan's friends don't feel justice was served.
You pardon the killer, you get what I'm saying? You pardon the person that took a child's life, somebody's son, somebody's brother.
And what message do you fear that the pardon of these 2 individuals sends?
I think there's 2 implications that jump out. One is that if you are law enforcement in this country, you can operate above the law. The second is you really see what the corruptive nature of a pardon is.
Lawyers for the officers say the case never should have been brought and would have been overturned on appeal. They say Hilton was a known gang member with a long arrest record and that officers had good reason to stop him. The officers are now suing the Justice Department, alleging malicious prosecution.
So calling it a murder and a cover-up is absurd. There have been many instances over the years, unfortunately, where police pursuits result in accidents. It has never been charged as a crime before, much less murder.
As for their pardons, neither of the officers would have qualified under what the DOJ manual states is an important consideration: acceptance of responsibility, remorse, and atonement. And the pardons have had profound consequences, against the recommendations of the department's own disciplinary review board. Just 2 months later, D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith reinstated Sutton with a 25-day suspension, while Zabavsky was allowed to retire after paying a $2,500 fine. The D.C. Auditor's report called the actions extremely lenient, saying they undermine the accountability and transparency that are so important for any major city police department in maintaining trust with the community. For Karan's mom, it was a betrayal, not only of her.
If someone kills your child, will you want them to babysit your child, your next child, or any child?
But of the city where she still lives.
I live my life in this country, and everything that I want, I worked, I lived for, was taken from me. I can't see my child. I go home empty.
Joining us is MS Now's Justice and Intelligence correspondent, Ken Dilanian. And Ken, tucked into your reporting there is the fact that these 2 officers are now suing the Justice Department for malicious prosecution, which is the system Donald Trump is welcoming as a way for them to perhaps just settle with the Justice Department on some kind of payout.
That is the great fear of some of the people who prosecuted this case, that the Trump Justice Department now will hand millions of dollars to these officers. And the other thing about this, Lawrence, as you saw there, is that Donald Trump is wielding this enormous power, the power of clemency. He doesn't even understand the basic facts of the case. I mean, he was clearly misinformed about what happened there. And this pardon had incredible ripple effects. The fact that the DC police chief reinstated these officers, and Officer Sutton is now on the force, active right now, is just mind-boggling to these prosecutors who took a great risk in bringing this case.
So if Donald Trump thinks this wasn't a citizen, therefore it was okay, we have to wonder, what would it mean in Donald Trump's formulation if he discovers then it is a citizen who they killed? I mean, what was the turning point for him in the pardon? We don't know.
I don't know. But this came 3 days after he pardoned all those January 6th offenders who assaulted police. And there's some people who think he was trying to send some kind of message, a pro-police message. The police union in D.C. was very upset about this prosecution, and they were in favor of this pardon. So, some of these pardons, a lot of money exchanged hands. This was one that was clearly for ideological reasons on the part of Donald Trump.
And there's, again, no procedure here. There's no traceable procedure that would be normally there in a pardon.
Exactly. And, the Justice Department had lots of procedures in every other administration, including an FBI background check very often. And people had to express remorse, and they usually have served most of their sentences. None of that is happening with any of these Donald Trump pardons.
And as you continue to comb through the pile of pardons, how difficult is it to find the ones that tell the story that should be told?
I mean, it's actually fairly easy. The difficulty is picking which outrageous case to highlight. Right?
How do you pick?
Yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches for a journalist, and it's sad for the country.
As we go forward, has there been any pardon procedure introduced during the Trump administration now?
They keep saying that lawyers at the Justice Department are reviewing these pardons, but we have no evidence of that. And they're certainly not following the old rules and norms as they existed going back generations, really. So it's just not clear that there's any review. But the one thing that the White House does say is that Donald Trump is the ultimate decider. He's driving this train.
So this really is then a presidential power. I mean, in the past, it was kind of a bureaucratic process. So there was a certain amount of bureaucratic power deciding which one of these gets sent all the way to the president. It's kind of a shared power along that line. This now is just entirely up to Donald Trump.
That's a great point. And the few occasions where presidents diverged from that and pardoned donors or family members was a scandal in the past. And now it's just happening all the time.
Ken Dilanian, thank you very much for your reporting and for joining us tonight. We'll be right back. That is tonight's last word.